The guns that made them fly off again.
And they're the bravest people and the friendliest people that ever lived round about here. You know about, but I wish I had been an IRA woman. I would have been here on the spot and had a machine gun.
Were all these houses occupied yesterday?
They were all occupied, yes. Yesterday, all by Roman Catholics. Places such as different areas, such as Turf Lodge, different other places like St. Thomas's School, some of them up in.
An urgent phone message went out from Clonard Monastery station for the nightly help making a vain attempt to stop the fighting at the junction of Cooper's. Heard of women and girls panicking, they were crying off. So I directed the monastery, I went, brought them in through the monastery. People were up, they were up, certainly female in my life. There were to the time.
They had guns and ammunition, and we hadn't anything at all.
Where were you at this time?
Well, we had to fly into the Clonard church, the monastery, and we had to crawl along, from getting shot in one of the windows.
Were there?
There was cleared out from this part, and they were sniping from the roofs, and well, we hadn't anything to protect ourselves at all.
It was at this stage shots looking through the monastery a cross on the big X spot. The is post opposite the old credit union Bill Street. Body was lying. A man had arrived before me, one sure of that. I looked into the face of I didn't recognize Gerard Macaulay, and Gerard was still conscious. He opened his eyes, and I did think that he showed signs of recognition as he looked at me. I gave him absolution. I anointed him, helped to put him on. Just at that stage, an ambulance arrived, and we got him onto the ambulance, and afterwards, the way to hospital.
Have you heard all the tale of Kashmir, where most of the fighting was done? It was Geraldo Macaulay was shot by an orange sniper's gun.
Somebody had been here and inquiring was there any
I believe I have their support because I am an uncompromising Protestant, pledged to uphold the principles of the great Protestant Reformation.
It is obvious that the Unionist Party is quite prepared to set Catholic against Protestant in this country, rather than give the reforms which would in fact mean that there would be an end to sectarianism.
Catholics march in one direction, Protestants, accompanied by the blare of martial music, march in the other. When the courses of these two factions collided, the result was civil disorder. This week, Echo looks beyond the parades to the causes of strife in Northern Ireland. Violence like this hit Northern Ireland in 1969 after years of simmering bitterness between the Catholic minority and the ruling Protestant regime. But the problems are not entirely sectarian. Here in Belfast, capital city of the province, unemployment is a major factor in the recent upheaval. Even the dockyards, the largest source of employment in the city, have contracted in the face of foreign competition. And outside Belfast, the situation is worse. In some areas, the unemployment rate runs as high as 20% of the working population. Apart from the dockyards, there is little. Catholics claim they are the principal victims, accusing the Protestant government of depriving them of work, roads and municipal housing by political and religious discrimination. And while the economic problems are large and long-standing, it is religion above all which divides this land. 1690 is a date which ranks in many ways more important than 1970 within the confused infrastructure of Northern Ireland's religious divisions. In this annual reconstruction of the Battle of the Boyne, the Protestant forces of William, Prince of Orange, later to become King of England, defeat the Catholic army of King James II. Today, that victory is celebrated with fervor by the Protestants of the province as to rule. They have been fighting the same battle for nearly 300 years. The Catholic flag is shot to ribbons, while the Union Jack, symbol of Northern Ireland's union with England, flies everywhere as Protestants prepare for the great Orange Day parades commemorating the Boyne victory. And it's more than a school holiday for the children. Indoctrinated and decked out in the symbols of the faith, they too wait to march. The bands and the banners of the Protestant Orange Lodges wind in day-long procession through the streets of all Northern Ireland cities on Orange Day, and Catholics remain out of sight. For years, these parades were harmless enough. But in the heightened political tension of recent times, Catholics increasingly saw them as an affront, a flaunting of Orange Lodges as an organized arm of the Unionist Party government. Catholic opposition and demands for equality began to grow. Under its own banner, the illegal Flag of Error, the civil rights movement inevitably captured massive support. Civil rights protests against alleged discriminations were regarded at first as no more than a nuisance. But as they continued and became more insistent and extreme, demonstrators began clashing with Ulster's police, the only police force in the United Kingdom which at that time carried sidearms. Clashes remained bloodless during this time, but already the seed of later violence had been sown. Demonstrations broke out like a rash across the face of Northern Ireland. In an attempt to maintain law and order on the streets, the Ulster government reinforced its police force by calling up special reserves, known as B Specials, Protestant to a man. Catholics reacted violently and the situation worsened. Civil rights degenerated into battles of the crudest kind in Belfast, Londonderry and other towns. In the sway of battle, Catholics and police slugged it out, each accusing the other of throwing the first stone in an unedifying succession of street fights. A great many of the civil complaints about boat rigging, inequality of housing and job opportunity, as well as the brutal behavior of police and B Specials, were later supported, at least in part, by an independent inquiry. But the real issues became obscured. The battle engulfed Catholic areas in Belfast and Londonderry, and as the fighting grew more bloody, petrol bombs ominously replaced stones as the main weapons. And into this arena stepped two champions with diametrically opposed views. Bernadette Devlin, aged 21, a civil rights campaigner and Catholic, became the darling of the movement. Within a year, she became Britain's youngest Member of Parliament. On the other side, the Reverend Ian Paisley thundered anti-Catholic rhetoric to such good effect that he too became a British Member of Parliament. And as the violence moved into a new and more vicious phase, their voices became the battle cries of two factions now embroiled in a bitter, bloody clash.
Oh, God, visit Ulster at this time. Remove from us the tyrants who would seek to take away our liberty. Be pleased to stir the people of this land. And, oh, God, in wrath, remember mercy, and for thy Son's sake, give us great victory.
If I thought it would bring justice to the people of this country, I would be quite prepared to give my life. The only thing is that in the present situation, because the Unionist Party is not prepared to do anything, quite a few of us may give our lives for nothing.
But as always, when politicians speak of victory and the laying down of life, it was the ordinary people who suffered the privations and the loss. The remarkable thing about Northern Ireland was that these people were prepared to go on perpetuating the same battle in the name of religion. Whatever political motives actuated the Ulster government and the civil rights leaders, the fight became basically between men, women and children of the Catholic faith against men, women and children of the Protestant persuasion. In 1969, when it became clear that the Ulster police could no longer contain the violence, the British government stepped in. Troops were sent in force to the province to restore order. On the streets, which had seen the worst of the rioting, they stood as impartial buffers between the two sides. Nightly curfew, the troops imposed a temporary peace. The brief threat of intervention from Éire, the public which constitutes the rest of Ireland, added fresh fuel to the situation for a time. But barricades behind which Catholic communities had defended themselves, Catholic news sheets itself by months of rioting. Bernadette Devlin was sent to prison for her part in the Londonderry battles. The expected mass demonstrations were on a smaller scale than before.
It wasn't my decision. There's not much I can do about it.
The clergy, for their part, made some attempt to reconcile their communities, but peace in Northern Ireland can still only be guaranteed by the presence of troops. There are hopeful signs for the people of the province. Faced with the justifiable claims of the Catholic minority, the Ulster government is committed to reform, including the introduction of universal suffrage and equality in housing and employment, regardless of religion. Furthermore, the B specials, so feared by Catholics, have been disbanded and the police disarmed. It appears that Northern Ireland suffering has achieved something. It remains to be seen whether all the reforms will be adequately implemented, and if the Catholic minority will be satisfied. If so, peace may reign permanently here. If not, then the curse of bigotry and its own history may yet again convulse this land and its oddly devout people.
"100 years ago, Ireland stood at the brink of a bloody civil war. At the time, the whole of the island was ruled from London, but a bill before the House of Commons at Westminster planned to establish Home Rule, creating a separate parliament in Dublin that would have extensive powers over Irish affairs. In a dramatic act of protest, 500,000 unionists, men and women from all classes of society, signed their names to what became known as the Ulster Covenant. Some, it was said, even signed in their own blood.